Hey everyone. As you see, I'm still on the road. I'm not back to my usual home studio. But I did want to get back to you guys and talk a little bit about what happened at Gastech last week and some of my takeaways at this amazing show. So Gastech, for those who don't know, is probably one of the largest oil conventions that we have in our industry. It's held every year. And this year they advertised 50,000 people coming to it. I'm not sure that's the case or not, but there was a lot of people there. It was held in Houston, which always makes it easy for people to come. And to the credit of the organizers, they make it free to attend. It's quite expensive to attend as a delegate, but if you just want to walk around the convention floor and meet people, it is free. So I commend the organizing committee for keeping that free because that really encourages people to attend, and it's a great place to meet lots and lots of people. Unfortunately, I think we all tend to overbook our schedules, and there's just too many things, and you're running from place to place to place. I also want to thank the guys that have stands that offer free coffee to everybody and let us sit there because a lot of us don't have the big stands. And so just having a place to sit and having a cup of coffee and talking to some people is always nice. So putting that aside, let's talk about the mood. The mood was, I would say, guarded optimism. There was a bit of a spring in the step, you might say. People seemed quite happy. There was a lot of people, it's walking around. There was obviously people participating from all over the world, and so that was nice. That was nice. It was nice. The mood was definitely more positive than I've seen in years past. Probably the weather was nice, and Houston is always a good place to have it. That probably made a difference. But it was a very pleasant time to be there. That there wasn't a lot of people pissed off or anything of that sort, which is nice. Now, of course, with this guarded optimism, there's always a reason why it's guarded and not unbridled optimism, and that I think the U.S. regulatory regime is really affecting a lot of people. As you know, we had the DOE, the Department of Energy export review pause going on and still going on, and then a couple of months ago we had the Texas LNG and Next Decade FERC permit review, and that didn't, FERC lost the case in the DC courts, and that means that these projects permits are potentially in jeopardy. It's hard to know whether that's going to stop construction in Next Decade. Of course, Next Decade would like to make sure it doesn't stop construction. There's maybe $5-6 billion of invested in that project out of the 12 to $18 billion project investment. There's a couple thousand people working on site. So, if that project is forced to stop construction, that will be a disastrous for all of us, for the industry, for the mood, for the regulatory regime, and for the US. It really would put investment in the US in a bit of more question than it should be. But there seems to be a general consensus that's probably not going to happen. I'm just not that convinced just yet. We'll know in the next few weeks whether the construction will stop or not. But the fact is, just a week before Gastech, so the FERC did release its new schedule, and both for Next Decade and for Texas LNG, it looks like their permits are going to be, requiring a supplemental environmental impact statement, and that whole process, including a public scoping period, is stated right now to extend till November 2025, so more than a year from now. Not sure what that really means for the pre-FID projects like Texas LNG. They are putting on a brave face and saying that they're going to continue working, and hopefully this process will go through smoothly. As I said, Next Decade is hoping the construction continues. I think we'll see how it all plays out. Election year politics is definitely involved in all of this, which is unfortunate because we always used to say that the US is one place where you follow the system, you follow the rules, and you'll get the permits and you'll be allowed to construct and you're allowed to export. Suddenly, we're becoming a bit more like the rest of the world, where suddenly the government has a bit more of the final say. So let's see how it all pans out. But that's why the guarded optimism and not the full optimism. A couple of other things that I noticed was there wasn't a lot of new, or wasn't any really, apart from my project and one other project in the states. Any new LNG export projects being proposed around the world. This is the place where companies like to launch their new projects, their new terminal, their new field developments. In the past, Shell would launch their Prelude, and Eni will launch Coral and all that kind of stuff. We really didn't see a lot of that. So there wasn't a lot of any surprises. So that really tells me that we are going to a position where, going to an era where supply is going to be quite constrained in terms of we know what projects are producing today, we know what projects are under construction, and we know what projects are in the permitting phase. and there's not going to be a lot of new surprises. There's not a lot of discoveries out there that need to be developed. Guyana may be an exception to that, but pretty much we know what we know. And so I think that should be a cause of a bit of concern, because we are all excited about the demand. There seems to be no question about the demand growth. There seems to be a lot of optimism about demand growing in Southeast Asia, India, obviously price dependent, and maybe China just kind of hopefully staying at this kind of less of a growth rate than we have had seen in a few years, but continuing being an important market. There wasn't a lot of overhang like I've seen in the last years about the coal industry taking market share. I think we are now, as I said in my videos a couple months ago, we are past peak foolishness, and I think that now we are realizing that gas is here to stay. There really wasn't any talk of hydrogen. I mean, I was struggling to find anybody that wants to talk anything about hydrogen at all. So I think that hydrogen projects, there'll be a few projects that kind of linger on. Whether any of them get it to FID, I think I'm not the one to answer that. But there wasn't a lot of discussion about that. What I thought was interesting, that of course of the Middle East, which is always interesting to watch what the Middle East producers do. Qatar was not present. I think Qatar, for whatever reason, did not show up to Gastech. So not having the world's largest producer there changes the dynamics a little bit. Aramco was there, but they weren't really talking about anything real. I thought there was a lot of just displays that didn't seem to show anything much, future CCS projects and carbon storage and things like that, but nothing really that's going to move the needle. Even the Abu Dhabi booth, which was ADNOC's booth, was massive, but they didn't really push their new project. Is that because the new projects are already pre-sold to the equity owners, the Shells and the Exxons and the Totals? So they're not really available for common buyers to buy. I think that's probably something to do it. So we didn't really see a lot of new projects being proposed. Of course, there was no Russian involvement in the past. No Russian involvement in this show in the past. I remember, was it? I can't even remember who it was, but one of the big Russian producers even had a volleyball court with girls playing volleyball in the middle of these shows, which is kind of crazy, because I don't know what that was the message was going to show, but bunch of girls jumping around in shorts playing volleyball in the middle of a show seemed a bit bizarre. But it was a Russian booth in one of the shows a couple of years ago, so there was no Russian presence. There was very little Chinese presence. Surprisingly, there was quite a bit. I mean, a bit, as I say, there was one large Indian booth and a few other Indian companies, but not a lot of Indian suppliers running around or in the booths. So technology wise, I'm not a technology expert, but I do like to learn about new things. There wasn't anything new. There wasn't, what I saw, any new modular LNG tank design. There wasn't any new technology. It was more of the same. So are we reaching a stagnant phase in our industry? That could be the case, actually. So just to recap, yes, there's an optimism. There's going to be a great growth in demand. Uh, but there wasn't any new supply projects launched. I think Gulfstream was one of the very few projects that are out there. Uh, there wasn't any new technology to the novice to see. Yes, there may be some niche things here and there, but nothing that went wow to me. I thought that the hydrogen stuff was very, very subdued. So I think it's kind of beyond what we were talking, the hype that we had a couple years ago. And there's the overhang was on the U.S. regulatory system, because if we're going to meet this demand, we're going to have to solve the U.S. regulatory system, because with the Middle East and which is Qatar and Abu Dhabi kind of maxed out after they announced projects, we have very little new giant projects out there that are going to move the needle. Yes, there could be a few things here and there in Africa, not much. There could be the Guyana project, but are we going to have the giant projects that move the needle? I'm just not sure that's the case. So that's kind of my takeaways from Gastech. It was great to meet lots of people. I was amazed to see how many people came up to me and said they watched my videos and took pictures with me. I didn't, not like, I feel like it was a very, very nice to hear. So I encourage them to continue watching the videos, and I'm glad that some people get a lot of value out of those. I love doing them. So let's continue building a community around this. So let's talk about another subject, which is kind of related, but not exactly, which is the demand. there is an expectation that the world's demand of LNG is going to grow, but in my view, and I think this is kind of confirmed, that demand is going to grow in very price sensitive markets. What I did not see at Gastech, and I think that the industry really needs to get its control on, is cost. We had this great excuse during COVID and the rising prices of steel and labor to start talking about capex going up 40%. Well, let's be clear. If the capex goes up 40% and the LNG prices go up 40%, we're not going to see the demand going up as much as we forecast it is, because this new demand growth is going to come from very price sensitive markets. The Pakistans, the Bangladesh, the Indians, the emerging markets around the world. I mean, everybody's price sensitive, but we got away with not murder, but we got away with everything when the Europeans were desperate 2 years ago to pay anything they had to pay. But that European demand is now not going to grow dramatically anymore. Prices have come down quite a lot in Europe, and I think they'll stay down. So, what are we going to do by bringing the cost of our industry down? What are we going to bring the cost of supply down? I didn't see much talk about that at Gastech at all. People still seem to think that we can get away by charging the higher prices. When the price went up, everybody blamed steel price and interest price and labor price. Well, steel prices are back down dramatically. Interest rates are coming down. We're probably at the level, yes, they're still high compared to 2 3 years ago, but we're back down to the 2005 levels. And labor prices are also, I think they have peaked. They're going to start coming down as the projects on the Gulf Coast and other places start being developed, because there's not as many new projects in the pipeline. So are we as an industry going to have the discipline to bring down the LNG prices? I'm just not sure that we have that in us to do, but we have to. If we don't, we kill the golden goose. We kill the demand goose, basically, because that demand is only there if the price is right. If the price is high, the demand is going to go elsewhere. You're not going to get the utilities in emerging markets to start paying a lot more than they pay for electricity generated from gas, from coal, for instance. And we're going to see a dramatic slowdown in the city gas utilization. And then they'll say, hey, we're just going to use gas, which is electricity, for our heating and our air conditioning, which is kind of what a lot of the cities around the world are getting away from gas anyway. So if we don't want to kill the industry, which I'm scared that we are capable of doing, kill as in kill the growth of the industry, we won't kill what's happening, but kill the growth. We have to bring our costs down. So all the EPC guys out there, and all the contractors out there, and all the labor suppliers, all the equipment suppliers, you've had your time. It's been fun. You've got away by charging 40% more. If you continue to do that, unfortunately, the projects are just not going to find the markets, and we're going to slow down. I think the American producers are doing their part. We see Henry Hub price at $1.80 right now, which is incredibly low. So gas supply is not going to go up. The price, the feed gas price. I like to think transportation prices are regulated. I'm talking the U.S. model here, but we have to see the EPC costs come down. We have to see steel prices coming down. We got to see that reflected in the EPC cost. And I think I know that the number of EPC contractors is reduced, with the Zachary's of the world and the KBRs and all that, kind of getting away from lump sum. But whether it's lump sum or turnkey is not really the discussion here. The discussion is, if you want to maintain a market, because you're not offering anything new. Let's be completely clear. There's not a lot of innovation out there. So if you really want to compete, you got to start competing on price, something you haven't had to do in a long time. Hope this was interesting. Please continue watching my videos. I love doing them, and I'll continue doing it as long as people watch them. So let's do that. I'm trying to build a community. Um, I like to build a dialogue and engage in constructive dialogue. There's some people that are not happy with my videos. Some people are not happy with the way I'm being outspoken. I got threatened to be sued last week. But, hey, you can't please everyone. So anyway, I continue speaking what's on my mind. I hope you guys continue watching. Thanks again. Bye-bye.